This is And Now You Know, and in studio are some of the most aesthetically pleasing men in the world.
Hi, folks. Marlow Hooper, law clerk, licensed to thrill.
Kevin Bailey, technical recruiter, and just a really nice guy, if I do say so myself.
And I'm Austin Cross, voice actor, sometimes crooner, producer, and host of this show. And Now You Know is the show that talks about the issues that are important, of course, to you. What do you do when you're new? New job, new city, new friends. Where do you even start? We have the rules to live by then. It's been said that there is no love in the heart of the city, but we disagree respectfully. If you're young and ready for love, you need to listen to this, all that, and much, much more coming up on And Now You Know. This is And Now You Know. I'm Austin Cross. Everybody is from somewhere. If you were to ask around, very few people would actually be born and raised in the same place. You got to go to college. You got to get that big job. But when you're new in town, life can be pretty rough. No friends and a whole different way of doing business. I want to open up the show by asking guys here, is it really possible to prepare yourself for the big move? Or can nothing prepare you for the culture shock?
I think nothing actually prepares you more for the shock of being new than being new.
Okay.
What does that mean?
Yes, we're going to delve into that now. Well, let me ask you this, because Kevin pointed out two very interesting things.
Yeah.
And that means, of course, yes. He's like, yeah, of course I did. Kevin, that's what I do.
That's a great thing I said.
False.
Well, let me ask you this, though, because you said there's two different things. There's that one anxiety-driven.
Yeah.
But once you're there, that door closes, your parents say goodbye.
Right.
If they come with you, especially for college, they kiss you goodbye, you hug, and you sit down on your bed and you say, this is my new life. What do you feel?
I typically feel that I'm hungry, and I would like to feed myself in this new situation that I'm in. No, typically, there's a lot of feelings going on, and I've been through this feeling probably 3 times in my life now.
Yeah.
Once in college, I went to college up in the San Francisco Bay. For those of you guys who aren't in California, that's an hour plane ride or a 5.5-hour drive.
Wow.
Also, when I moved to Orlando, Florida for law school, that's the other side of the country last time I checked. That was a major transition in my life. And also just moving to the LA area after I moved back home. So it's thrilling.
Yeah, everyone's going to feel a little different, and there are different symptoms and different, ways of coping with it. For me personally, I remember that I didn't get homesick until all of my family left. Ooh. And then I realized, oh boy, I am all by myself. And for those that don't have my background story, I'm talking about my big move from when I went to college. I used to live here in LA, and then I moved on the other side of the United States to Florida. And so when they just said, hey, bye, all this consuming fear just kind of consumed me.
And I was going to say, fear is a really key thing, how you feel.
Right.
Like Marlow brought up, he said you sit down in the bed and you first think I'm hungry. And it's a joke, but it's funny because when you go to a new town, you don't know where anything is. You say, oh, I want food, but I don't know where the closest grocery store is. It's very frightening.
But when I also say I'm hungry, I meant it in a metaphorical sense. I'm hungry for adventure.
Hungry for change.
Hungry for new activities.
Wow. Well, I think that's very important, though, to learn your surrounding area. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of get into how you do it. How do you spread your wings and fly and just take in all the great things your city has to offer? And of course, the best way to do that is if you make friends. You can't really have any fun without them.
The first thing that I had to realize personally when moving both to the San Francisco Bay and Orlando was that I still have my relationships. That's the hardest thing to realize, because just because these people aren't physically there with me, these relationships are still present. So it's still important to nurture your previous relationships. And that's why we have FaceTime. That's why we have phone calls.
Hey, Marlow, how many times did you call me while you were in Florida? I can count on one hand.
I still have the messages. Hey, what are you doing right now? How about now?
I was so hungry for change, Austin.
You left some people behind.
That is false. We remain Facebook friends.
I would also say, while nurturing still the people that you have back home, I would raise it too, is to make sure that you stay active in the place that you're in.
Absolutely.
And make new friends. Go out, talk to people, get involved.
I'd imagine that going to a different area is a lot easier than it was, say, 10 years ago, even 20 years ago. We have Skype now, which is great. We have phones, which is great. But as I'm sure many of our listeners can imagine, or maybe the parents of our listeners can imagine, a time when you go away to college and you had a phone in the lobby and mail.
But in those situations, you find other like-minded people. You find other people that are in the same new situation that you're in, and you bond over that. If you're in school, it's a lot easier to make friends in school. I think we can all say. However, what's hard is is that when you get outside of that dorm life, and this is going to my experiences in Florida, where I didn't live on campus, I lived in an apartment in downtown Orlando. At that point, you really have to meet friends because you're not in that school environment with like-minded people. You really have to get out there and expand your social network.
I wonder if people are as homesick now as they were back in the past, because now we, like you said, we have Facebook, we have Skype, we have all these things just to be so connected with each other, as opposed to 100 years ago, all you had was parchment and a quill.
And and like smallpox or something like that. Yeah. I'm writing you to say,
my dearest mother.
By the time this letter gets to you, I will no longer be.
Oh, but you brought up something very interesting, Marlow, which is building that social circle.
Yes.
And that takes you getting out. You won't build it if you're just sitting in your room. You have to go out, and that takes confidence. So this is what the people want to know. How do people who aren't Marlow Hooper gain that excitement, that energy, and that confidence to go out and find people?
One of the things that really helped me in the situation was finding your passion. And that was a huge factor in helping me overcome homesickness. For me, my passion is improv comedy. And I was able to do that in Orlando. And in doing so, I was able to find new like-minded individuals in a new setting. So now, not only do I have like-minded individuals that I'm friends with in school, I also have these like-minded individuals in a passion of mine. So all of a sudden, I'm no longer Marlow alone in a new city. Now I'm Marlow with friends in different social circles.
I would say, yeah, but definitely finding passion would be great. But also, I would say, just in any sense, just kind of get involved and talk with people, join any kind of organization. For me personally, I joined a fraternity. Now, I know that's not for everybody, but for me, it was an amazing thing because it allowed me to open up and find other people of whom I would normally never have been friends with. But since we had a shared club that we were kind of forced to talk with each other, it allowed me to find friends a lot faster.
And what's interesting that both of you brought up was the fact that you're kind of getting to know yourself as well. I mean, Marlow brought up passions and Kevin, you brought up fraternities, but a lot of it comes down to is you don't really know who you are until you do get away, until you do move and strike out on your own and you're making your own money and you're responsible for your schedule, for what time you go to bed. And that can be really overwhelming at first because you think, oh my gosh, I'm going to go have as much fun as humanly possible. Then you realize that other things start to suffer as well. So one of the things that, of course, we'll have to cover is one, finding out who you really are when you're away, especially after college. Now, I know there are some college people probably listening, but after college is a completely different world because the people around you don't have to be your friend or even like you.
You learn that. And like I said, I mean, the best way to learn that is to just jump in wholeheartedly.
You moved away to law school, which I know is still kind of education, but it doesn't have that same kind of safety net as college does.
Exactly.
So I was wondering, when you moved into the city and you didn't really have a lot of options on campus, how did you get over that? How did you find other friends when you didn't have those organizations to join?
It took time, Kevin, and the first year for me was by far the hardest. I mean, there was times where I would sit on my couch and watch old episodes of an LA show and be so nostalgic and homesick for home I didn't know what to do. It's tough. I mean, the first Thanksgiving you hit when you are by yourself alone in a new city and you're not flying back to the West Coast, it can be tough.
And I tell you, it probably makes you really thankful for your home, and it really makes you realize what you left. So coming up, we'll talk about that, of course, homesickness. We'll be back in just a few with more Now You Know, and if you haven't already, visit us online, facebook.com/and Now You Know Radio. Again, that's facebook.com/and Now You Know Radio. More coming up. We're back with more, and Now You Know, and there's no place like home. I mean, sometimes your home sucks, but more often than not, you're probably going to miss it. So what even is homesickness, Marlow? What do we do?
You know what's really interesting is that our generation of people, we're constantly on the move. Either people are moving to new cities for new jobs, or people are moving to new cities after they recently got married to somebody and they're now relocating together to begin their lives anew somewhere. This topic of homesickness, I think, is pertinent, and I'm happy we're talking about it now. Me personally, like I stated earlier, I lived up in the San Francisco Bay Area for college. I was in a collegial atmosphere, and I was with like-minded students who were around the same age. Many of them were from Southern California as well. So though I felt this sense of longing for home, it was a little easier to cope for me than my move to Florida.
So how do we find the like-minded people? Because you mentioned something interesting during the break, and I'm going to bring it back up again. You meet somebody at a bar or out somewhere, and you have a good conversation, but it doesn't mean that person is going to be your best friend. I mean, how do you take it to the next level?
The one thing that I did, I delved in my passions. I knew that if I were to delve in, for me, improv comedy, I would meet other people that enjoyed doing improv. It would remind me of the nights where I'd hang out with you guys, my best friends in Los Angeles, going to the late night improv clubs like UCB or IO, and just having a good time.
The formula, I think, for building a new friend, and it's kind of funny because we don't think about finding new friends because a lot of times
we're set.
Exactly, because a lot of times, especially let's just talk about college. A lot of times when you make that big transition to college, it's the first time you've ever left your local area. You've followed your friends up all the way to high school, and so it's kind of like you having to learn how to make a new friend, of which you haven't done since you were in kindergarten, for when you just had to learn about making friends.
What do you do?
Yeah, what do you do? So I personally always felt like the formula for building a new friend is really it's relationships.
What is the formula, Kevin? How about you tell me that?
I zoned out for a second. I felt very Rick Perry right there. There's three things here. Oops. Shared experiences and time, I think, are the two concepts that you need to build a friend. So you need to meet somebody, have that experience together with that person, and then realize that it's going to take time to actually build a friend. You're never going to just meet someone and be friends. It takes time.
I say this, and I know I'm saying it as a guy, and it probably also translates to women, but it's very hard to make new friends with other guys. How do you do that? You don't just go up to a guy and say, hey, let's be friends. And if you're a girl, there's a lot of different type of girl.
This actually reminds me of that movie, I Love You, Man. And
yeah.
The movie's so funny because it's so true. I mean, for those who haven't seen the movie, it's about this guy, and he has all girlfriends his whole life, and he doesn't have any true guy friends. So before he gets married, he wants a best man, and he's trying to find a best friend in a sense. He just meets another guy, and it's just, they're grown men trying to be friends. It's such a weird concept.
I think it can be harder to find a person to be friends with than it is to find a person to date, really.
Yes, I think you're right, because at least when you're going out to date,
you can be upfront about
things. You can be upfront about what you want and where you're going, but friends, it's like, I want you to care about me and always be there for me.
You'll meet somebody and it's like, oh, this guy seems really cool. Okay, we're going to hang out and we're going to get some smoothies. We're going to play pool. And then the next thing you know, he's like, I'm going to go sacrifice a goat on Friday. You want to join me?
Maybe
there's going to be Kool-Aid. So
maybe what you should do is just like pass a note like you did back in high school. Will you be my friend? Check yes, no, or maybe. Maybe that would work.
You might get some unwanted attention that way, I'd say.
So just go to a bar and just ask, hey, so, we've known each other for about 5-10 minutes.
You're human, I'm human, let's do this thing.
Let's be friends.
Yeah, it's a weird and funky concept, but it's something that needs to be done.
I'm sure everyone's heard of meetup.com. If you haven't, definitely you haven't?
No.
What is it?
Check it out, guys.
What is it?
Meetup.com. It's, I don't know, the best way I can say it is like Craigslist for people that want to meet together, because you basically say, hey, I'm going to be here. You guys should all come. And, everyone has a...
My posse's going to meet your posse.
Well, okay, maybe they're more like...
My friends can meet your friends. Maybe we can be friends.
I guess it's more like hobbies, or so it's like the hiking meetup club. So every time we meet, we'll all go hiking, or the mid-20-somethings club.
That seems really dangerous, though. It's like some guy shows up with like some black trash bags.
There's typically a lot of people, and it's great because it's all online, and so people can just like in Facebook, you can basically accept if you want to go to this certain place, and then you can kind of comment and meet people before you actually meet them. You can look at just like in our modern age, you can Facebook stalk them, and said you can Meetup stalk them and just look at all their user information.
You know what? So I did download an app kind of like that once just to kind of try it out. And it's funny because it was like one of those meet friends apps. And it was funny because I saw this picture and it was like this girl and she looked very fit. And it's like, I'm going to hike this mountain at like 5 a.m. tomorrow. And it's like, these are the people who are attending. It's like John, Andrew, Matthew. And it's like, they are not just nature boys.
Walk very fast and don't look back.
Imagine running up in the mountains and like you see a girl and she's followed by 20 guys running behind her.
And the coyotes following them.
We just want to be friends, guys.
Yeah. You know, all guys ever want from girls is to just be friends.
That's
very clear.
That's an episode of itself.
That's coming up too.
Podcast number 8.
Well, so, you did bring up something very interesting, though. Hard to make good guy friends. There's always so many challenges. So how do you do it? There's going to be a lot of hit and miss now, isn't there?
There will be. Sports, for instance, is always a good male bonding activity.
Yeah, I've heard about it.
The sport games I hear are
I love when people
quite
score the best. I love when people score their goals and points.
But I mean, that's just one example. At least if you're at a sports bar or something, and your team's playing the new local team, and like there's some banter going along, that's at least going to get you social. That's going to at least get you talking to some
or
people
start like
about
a
the
bar
game.
fight or something like
Or possibly
that.
start a bar fight, depending on your subjective preference. I think in the sense of planning activities, like, hey, are you guys? I hear you guys are playing pool on Friday.
Yeah.
Maybe let's just all meet up here and play pool. We can watch the game. We can watch. I don't know, Gossip Girl on the bar TV. I don't know what have you.
I think the key is actually following some of the same rules that you do with dating, and that's to find that common interest, really hone in on it.
Yeah.
And so if he says, oh yeah, I love, this team, then you say, oh, they're playing next Saturday. You want to grab some beers and, watch it again? Okay.
I think
you
that's
set that mandate.
Yeah,
Grab the brewski.
I think that's the safe word is beer, so they know.
Yes.
Like, yeah, beer, because you can't be, dating with beer.
No,
right?
not quite. But I mean, I think for guys, there are some very universal things. And of course, beer, coming together, eating a meal.
I always think the 3 social connectors for guys: beer, women, and sports.
I think so.
I mean, that's pretty much universal triggers.
They're not difficult.
Yeah.
Well,
just talk about beer, women, or sports, and you're golden.
I don't want to be just like guys, and it's kind of hard for guys to talk about girls, but I mean, what
That's very
do
true.
girls bond over? I mean, boys, of course, is a big thing, right?
Yeah.
What else do they like?
Guys, wine, and art. I don't know.
I like Charles Shaw. Do you? I love Charles Shaw. There it is. Friendship
Chuck Party.
made forever. Well, when we come back, we might not be as entertaining as we were this segment. We might have to tone it down. But when we come back with more, and now of course, we're going to look at homesickness. How do you deal with those feelings? We'll have much, much more coming up after this. And if you haven't checked it out already, find our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/and now radio. We'll be back.
I can't stop now. Move up a little higher.
This is And Now and we're back, and we're talking homesickness. We're talking being far away from home, and as we've already discovered now, it can be a real challenge. Well, Kevin did some research on it for us, and what did you find out, Kevin?
All right, yeah, I looked at a great case study, and the definition of homesickness: the distress or impairment caused by an actual or anticipated separation from home.
What does that even mean?
That means that you are sick from being away from home.
Okay.
Homesickness.
That's homesickness.
That's what it is. No,
Loathsome disease.
I kind of brought it up in the beginning, which was, I think it really comes to 2 different things. There's the before the big move, which is more anxiety driven, when you're nervous about making that big transition, and then there's this second part, which is when you're already at the new location and now you're just feeling those loneliness and depressed.
Well, one thing I'd say is to focus on the reason you're moving in the first place. Think about the goal at hand. Now, granted, for me, my goal was I'm moving to this place to get my law degree. I know a lot of days people are moving to places because their spouse got a new job somewhere. So think about the fact that you're moving for your spouse. You're about to start your new family. You have to remind yourself of the positive reasons why you're moving to that spot to begin with. That has to be done first before anything, I'd say.
Now, before you step out the door, though, and this is going to be really, really personal, but the thought is, though, when you start saying goodbye, now saying goodbye isn't as final as it was, say, 20 years ago, when it would be goodbye if I never see you again, have a good life. But now you can keep up with everybody. I think as we covered in our last, our first ever episode, you don't really ever have to say goodbye, but how do you start? I mean, you have your family, of course you have your friends, but there's also those people who you might need to say something to because you may never see them again. How do you do it?
It's tough. I'd say you take them to a Starbucks. And you sit them down.
He stole
you
my
get them
line.
a caramel macchiato.
Is it really? I mean, I think ice cream might be a better one. Yeah.
Ooh, oh, because I mean, I can see.
Yeah, how
Sure.
about Cold Stone? That seems like a good
That way, I mean,
you
they're
know
always-
something cold's coming, something icy.
Yeah, you look at it, you're like, I like the way that they break up that candy. Speaking of breaking it up, guess what?
Great segue.
Oh, yeah, it is. But does going to a new city, do you have to break away from everything? Does it hold you back if you stay in a relationship from your old town, if you go to a new, bigger town?
It can hold you back only if you want it to hold you back.
Oh.
And by that, I mean, I think we all know where we're heading out right here with breaking up before moving to the new city. And in that sense, I believe that in terms of getting out and meeting new people and delving into new positive relationships, if you're at home all the time speaking to your significant other, or if you're on Facebook or FaceTiming them all the time, that can hinder your growth in the new place.
One of the things that I do recall from college is everybody who came in with a boyfriend before didn't have one by the time, the year ended, but also
Yeah.
but also
give it a semester.
The challenge was that they thought that they would be together forever, but then they realized that life got in the way. And I knew people who would come to these schools and everybody wants to be their friend, but they say, no, I have to go talk to my boyfriend. I have to go talk to my boyfriend. Until, by the end of the year, they had no friends because they spent all of their time talking to somebody who's not in their life anymore.
Yeah, and I don't want to dwell too much on long distance relationships, but I do think it's really important for people to have the end in mind. What's your vision? When are you guys going to see each other again? If it's just like, oh yeah, I'm going off to college and then I'll see you in 4 years when we finally live together, that's not going to work.
Yeah, you have to keep it realistic.
Yeah, but if it's like, hey, I'm moving up there in 6 or 7 months, well then it's a possibility. But you have to see the end, and if there's no end and you're just in a long distance relationship with no ending timeline, then you're setting yourself up
And
for failure.
you also have to question your motives. Are you moving because you want to end the relationship, or are you moving for an opportunity and you want that relationship to still be in your life?
I think that no matter what your philosophy is on it, if you want to keep the relationship alive and going, it's going to take time and it's going to take effort. And hopefully it doesn't take you away from, say, if you're going to school, your studies, it doesn't take you away from actually getting out and becoming emotionally independent on your own in a new area.
And you got to think what's best for the person, right? What's the cliche? If you truly love someone, set them free. And I think there's some truth to that, because if you're really holding on to something that just is never going to work, at the end of the day, then both of you guys are just wasting time. And I think that's detrimental to you both and to your growth.
And that means there are some really big questions that you'll need to ask yourself. Well, coming up, we will put a cap on it. We will put the little cherry on top and give you our final thoughts. That's all coming up on And Now You Know.
Everybody's got a thing, but some don't know how to handle it. Always read.
We're back with more And Now You Know, and we're talking getting away, when you move away, that homesickness, that feeling, and kind of dealing with your new environment as well as saying goodbye to your old one. We're going to put a cap on it, and we're going to start with Marlow.
Well, folks, for me personally, it all came down to a couple things. It came down to me remembering my goal, remembering why I moved to that new place to begin with. And for me, it was to gain an education. Also, the second point I'd have to say, it is about finding your passion. Delving into your passions in your new environment. Whatever passions you had at home, try to find a way to do those exact same things in your new city. Because in doing so, you're going to meet like-minded people. You're going to be able to talk about the things you love to talk about. And you're going to realize that this new and big transition in your life might not be so bad after all.
Okay, homesickness in two folds. Before your big move, understand that feeling a little bit of homesickness is completely natural. And especially when you're going to make a huge change in your life, you're going to feel a little bit of anxiety. So cope with it just like you would with most anxieties. Make sure that you're sleeping well. Make sure that you're, meditating or doing yoga or doing anything that helps you relax. Cognitive thinking, I think, is important. Playing the what ifs. What's the worst case scenario? How bad can it really be? Rationalization, I think, is really important. After your big move, if you're lonely and you're depressed, the biggest thing you could say is get moving, get involved, join organizations, talk with people. Don't run back home every chance you can get as well. I think that's really important. Make sure that you're staying where you are and actually talking to people and just doing things that kind of connect you to the new place.
Well, when you go to a place far away, it doesn't really mean that you have to forget where you came from. It doesn't mean that you have to forget your roots and just kind of push everything away. I find that sometimes when you're in a new area, to maintain those relationships, to remember the good times, to stay in touch with the old people can be a wonderful thing, of course, but it's not all things. You also need to put in the work. You also need to get out there. You need to meet new people. And you need to realize one thing, and that's what you're going through is something that everybody goes through. And once you get to that new place, you are going to feel afraid, you're going to feel lost, and you're going to feel a little bit overwhelmed, and it's going to stress you out. But if you just remember, it's a temporary situation. You give yourself a month, you give yourself 2 months, 3 months. Eventually, you're going to figure out that you know where everything is. You know where the local Target is. You know where Trader Joe's is. You know where to get the best barbecue in town. You learn these things because you really have no choice. That is our show. Thank you so much for listening to And Now You Know. I'm Austin Cross.
I'm still Marlow Hooper.
Kevin Bailey.
And we'll be back with more very, very soon. Check us out at facebook.com/And Now You Know Radio. Again, that's facebook.com/And Now You Know Radio. Thank you very much.